Thank you very much, Stephen. With your testimonial, we conclude the session on logistics, so thank you very much. And we would like to start the session on automotive. Please allow me to welcome His Excellency Ahmed Samir, Minister of Trade and Industry. Dr. Ahmed Fekry Abdel Wahab, Vice Chairman of Eastport Said Development Company and the VP of the African Association of Automotive Manufacturers. In the other session, there is a signing of MOUs, so he might be in the other session and hopefully will join us soon. Ms. Martina Biene, Managing Director and Chairperson of Volkswagen Africa, President of Africa Association of Automotive Manufacturers. Mr. Milton Stefani, Associate Director, Regional Head for Manufacturing and Services at EBRD. Mr. Stefano Ziliani, CEO of Prometeon Tyre Group Egypt. Mr. Ankush Arora, CEO Mansour Automotive Group. As I mentioned, I think Dr. Ahmed and Ms. Martina are called by the Prime Minister in the other room for the ceremony of signing the MOUs, and I would like to apologize on their behalf. They will join us as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. We will start the session nonetheless. Maybe we can put the slide on with the QR code because during this session on automotive and the next one on pharma, you can submit any question that you want via the QR code that you can see here on the top right. So please don't hesitate to ask any question you would want, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end where we can address some of the questions. Your Excellency, thank you very much for being with us today. As the Egyptian Minister of Trade and Investment and Industry, can you elaborate more on the strategic initiatives? They are working, they're on. Yeah. Okay. Can you tell us more about the strategic initiatives that your ministry is undertaking, and maybe spend a bit more time also on your objectives and the outcome for the Automotive Industrial Development Program, AIDP, as well as the Supreme Automotive Industrial Council that was created?
Okay. Thank you, Rami. Good evening, everyone, and sorry for the inconvenience of the delay of today's schedule. Let me start by focusing on industry itself, and then we'll go through the automotive program. Industry in Egypt have faced a lot of problems for the last 4 years. Its contribution in the GDP is almost 16.8%, almost 17%. We have faced a poly crisis starting from the COVID pandemic, moving to the inflation, moving to one crisis till the other, till the war now on Gaza. And that has affected a lot this sector. So we had to came by a lot to do in this issue to make it resilient and see what happened exactly because of a lot of problems that were exported to us. First, we came up with industrial strategy for Egypt, what to do, what we're planning to do. And as a subsector of it, a strategy to encourage the automotive sector in Egypt. Egypt is one of the 3 largest countries in Africa in automotive industry, and it has a long history in it. But we didn't fulfill what we need, and we didn't reach exactly the goals that we need. So basically, we made a strategy to give some incentives for those who are planning to invest in this sector of industry. And it depends on 4 pillars. The first one is localization. The more localization that you will do, you will receive more incentives. The mass production, the more numbers that you're going to produce, the more incentives that you will receive. The third one is the export. If you're going to export, and I think one of my colleagues here is not existing now, maybe he will show later, they started to export their vehicles, to the African continent using the leverage of the free trade agreement that we're having here in Egypt. And the last one is the environment, or the EVs. These are the main 4 pillars that we were looking for when we had this strategy. And we have signed a lot of MOUs, and now I think Martina is about also to share us within this program very soon with Volkswagen. 6 other companies are start their own facilities, production facilities in Egypt with a lot of new models. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Also keen on hearing what you have for the automotive sector going forward. If you have any interesting announcement to make today, we would be keen on hearing.
We have over 300 suppliers for this sector.
Yeah.
And I'm still not happy about the percentage of the local component percentage that we're having here in Egypt. So I offered to my colleagues to have like a study that maybe for the future with a certain volume of production, we could wave our heads away for a certain period, a short period, to start their own production, but on a certain volume that we're looking for. And then it will bring up the suppliers that they will need. So we're trying to create the volume first, and then maybe we can move to the next step.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe if we start with Milton. You're the Associate Director, Regional Head of Manufacturing and Services at EBRD. EBRD is supporting the development of Egypt automotive sector, particularly in the financing and advisory services. How is it doing it? And how are you supporting the Supreme Automotive Council and also maybe EPAZ, the Eastport Said Automotive Zone?
Thank you, Rami. Very good to be here among friends and colleagues. EBRD has been present in Egypt since 2013, and we've invested in the country since then about $15 billion. So one of the largest investors in Egypt across all sectors of the economy. Specifically in the automotive sector, we are supporting the Supreme Council of Automotive with technical assistance, so grants and funds from the EBRD to support feasibility studies, especially the one in Eastport Said, to establish facilities, paint shop and other automotive assembly facilities. So the feasibility study is the first step towards establishing a manufacturing base with Volkswagen, Martina, and a few other colleagues, and further on to attract suppliers in the area to create a cluster of automotive manufacturing. So this is one way through grants, through technical assistance fund to establish the feasibility study to make the case. And the second way we work is by classical funding. So we finance OEMs, we finance suppliers in the automotive sector in Egypt, and then maybe I can explain a bit later on some specific cases we have done here.
Thank you. Maybe we start with the one of the CEOs from the private sector. Stefano, you have established your first factory in Egypt 20 or 30 years ago?
30 years ago.
30 years ago. Congratulations, I think you're celebrating your 30th year now. What helped Prometeon Tyre Group in Egypt to become the key player that it has become in tire manufacturing?
Well, first of all, let me express my gratitude to be here with all of you and in front of so nice audience and important people in terms of GDP in the country. Our key success pillar, we are a spin-off of Pirelli. So Pirelli is a well-known company, much more than ourselves. And a few years ago, Pirelli changed its shareholders' shares, overall shares. And while we were a business unit, now we are an independent company. We share together with them the shareholders. And we are assigned from, as a statutory from them, the business of commercial, industrial, and agricultural products. So basically, this is our sector. And since 30 years that we are present in the country, we produce and sold in the market 19 million, what we call giant tires. And this happened thanks to our people, because 70% of our production is exported. And the main continent on which is receiving our products is Europe. Then it's followed by Africa, then goes to Middle East, and then goes to the Americas. So basically, we are from this side, we are exporting all over the world. So to be a good, recognized exporter means to have the proper technology. But you cannot have the proper technology if you don't have the people that are capable to run it. So, to me, the first key successful factor is people, our people, and our workforce is all Egyptian. I am an exception. So I am the only Italian that is present. We don't have any other nationality. Don't ask me why, but that's the reason. So, but Egyptian is our base people, base culture, and I love all of them. The second point is products, because we have just completed the first session, what I call the first session of technology upgrade. At the end of this year, we have completed this session that included also the smart manufacturing, that include also a new R&D center. We are completely independent in researching and developing our tires, especially for the new changes that in the automotive are happening, especially on the electrical vehicles. It is impacting also our business. The third one, which I'm opening my factory to everybody, every single person and individuals that would like to visit us, is a pretty weird manufacturing site. Because we do have in Emreia, where we are established, 18,000 square meters of garden. I call garden because it is really a garden. We have more than 11,000 between trees and flowers. 500, and when we talk about biodiversity, we have 500 different types of trees and flowers. We have peacock, we have birds, we have fishes. So the respect of the planet, what they call respect of the planet, is the third key success pillar. All the irrigation, all the water that we are using is recycled water from our water station treatment from wasted manufacturing water. So we don't use resources from the planet. And I'm very proud about that because everybody that comes says, we are not in a manufacturing site, we are in a gardening. And these I really like it.
You're foreseeing maybe CBAM putting some tax on the imports of Tyre to Europe. Well done on the exports. That says a lot to the competitiveness of your company, but also the competitiveness of the Egyptian economy that allows for exports to one of the toughest markets, Europe, when we know it's served well by Eastern Europe, by Morocco, by Turkey and others. So that says a lot to the competitiveness of Egypt. Ankush, if I may, you're the CEO of Mansour Group. If I'm not mistaken, it was established in 1973 or 75, and maybe started in distribution first and then move.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sure. It started in distribution, then moved up the value chain into manufacturing, and now I think you're exploring manufacturing in EV, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us more about that and how how the Egyptian economy is helping you on growing?
Certainly, Rami, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Just to set the context, Mansour Group is a homegrown Egyptian group, which is now celebrating its 50th anniversary, actually. And we basically have 3 partnerships, 2 joint ventures and 1 franchise partnership. The 2 joint ventures are with General Motors, and the second one is with SAIC, and the franchise partnership is with Group Stellantis. In the last 2 decades, which is a matter of great pride for us, we have manufactured, assembled, and sold more than 1 million units in this country, right? Which are units that were produced by Egyptians for Egyptians. And this certainly gives us a lot of confidence in the potential of the country and the potential of the continent at large. Our business is very diverse, having a footprint spreading over 15 countries. And this is part of the long-term strategy for us to make Egypt as a manufacturing base and then also service Africa as a continent at large, right? So the building blocks of that strategy are already in motion with setting up the front-end distribution in 16 countries across Africa and setting up and increasing the manufacturing capacity in Egypt. Now, a big success story for us as part of this 1 million units that we've assembled and manufactured locally is been identifying the right opportunity or the gap in the market that can be fulfilled basis the local expertise and value that the country has to offer, right? And I think we've talked enough about what the country has to offer, but when I pick up the 3 big things, 1, a large consuming population, right? 2, the need for logistics as a big driver because that's a big cost in the business, right? And 3, the human capital, right? Which certainly is par excellence when you compare it to other parts of the continent, right? And making good of these 3 great values that Egypt offers has led to a success story in manufacturing and assembling a simple product like a pickup, all right, which drives the economy of the country today, which leads to job creation, all right, and which is also moving the wheels of the economy. So for any industrial activity to be successful, I think it is very important to understand the need and then map it with the value chain or the value that the environment or the country has to offer. And I think we've done a pretty good job with that. Going forward, the plans are furthermore ambitious. Yes, like any business, you have cyclicity, as His Excellency the Minister mentioned. We have faced challenges over the last 2 years, geopolitical, economic, but I think we are kind of, in the automotive industry, used to that, right? It's cyclical. You see good days and you see bad days, but that doesn't deter us in our confidence to further invest in local manufacturing. We are working on 3 projects. 1 should be executed in the next 12 months, another 2 over the next 18 months.
If you allow me, we'll get back to the challenges and the opportunities in the future. And that's, I think, a good segue for the second round of the questions, because we've looked a lot on the current situation and on the past, but we'd like to look forward. Automotive is a very competitive sector. Many hubs are being created. You have the old hubs that are being renewed in Europe and so on. You have new hubs that are being created in different parts of the world. How can Egypt differentiate itself, and how can Egypt really move forward? And if you allow me, Milton, I'll get back to you with your experience at EBRD. I'm sure you have looked at different automotive clusters or sectors. What can we learn? What can Egypt learn from the different lessons that you've seen?
Thank you. So yeah, we have a wide range, if you want, of activities as EBRD is financing across North Africa and Central Eastern Europe and Turkey, which are our regions where we operate. And we see success stories. For example, Morocco, Turkey has been a good success story. Central Eastern Europe has been a success story. I think Egypt has all the ingredients to become a success story in the automotive sector. I would focus, of course, the industrial policy that His Excellency mentioned. Some countries have thrived, if you want, through industrial policy, like Morocco, where they started with very little, and through government policies, they managed to create a successful automotive hub. But the other key importance is the skills in the industry, the training, the R&D. And as EBRD, we put a lot of emphasis in upgrading the skills, training of local people in Egypt, supporting the R&D activities. I'll bring two examples of our funding in this area. So one is with Valeo, which is a French Tier 1 supplier, which has a very successful R&D center in Cairo, employing about 2,500 engineers, software engineers, where they work with all the OEMs around, mainly around Europe, I'd say around the world as well. So you have the Germans, the French OEMs, their engineers coming in Cairo to test their products, to develop new products with the Egyptian know-how and the skills on the R&D. So that's on the high-end skills, but also more kind of mechanical, mechatronic skills are important to develop a wide base of production, manufacturing. And in that area, we have supported El Swidi Group is not a pure automotive company, but we have supported their training academy. On that side is mainly through grants, so not commercial funding, but through grants, to develop several programs for young people, 16, 17, 18-year-old youth, to train on different pre-university, if you want, skills, mechanical, mechatronic, etc. So I would say, of course, industrial policy, but also local skills in Egypt are important on both ends, pre-university, but also the high-end university, engineering, post-university skills.
Putting a lot of focus on skills and at all ranges, from research and development to mechatronics and vocational training and all of these. Indeed, we're witnessing a war for talent more and more, and this is quite linked with the FDI attraction efforts. So thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Stefano, if I may get back to you, His Excellency mentioned that localization is extremely important for Egypt, and they have high ambitions on these. What opportunities do you see in the value chain of Tyre, in order to take the example of your company? And where can Egypt as an ecosystem, or your company yourself, integrate further in the value chain?
I take precisely ourselves as an example, because unfortunately we have some technical limits. So the natural rubber is not growing in Egypt. There are no trees that are producing lattice, and so we cannot use it. But there are many other parts that we can, making some effort, but we can develop the local market. It's not something that happened by a click. It's something that required efforts from ourselves to teach the people what we need, because not necessarily the grade of materials and the raw materials and components we need are available, but this is something that we have to do. A year ago, we have launched what we call a strategic initiative inside of the group, specifically for Egypt, with the support of all our force worldwide, to develop a local market. As a goal, this is a first step, is 3 years plan, so now 1 year is already gone, was mainly spent for collecting interest in our business, signing the memorandum of understanding, and start the homologation process. Within the end of this year, we are going to introduce in our production, in our mass production, the first localized products, and I'm very, very glad about that. Because our goal, in 3 years, we would like to double percentage of material that we are buying locally right now. And at the same time, reducing nearby 50% what we are totally importing from the value of today. This is a pretty ambitious target, but I'm very glad if we succeeded. So this is fundamental for creating the competitive advantage for our future.
Thank you. The last question before we go to the audience, thank you very much. I'm seeing some questions being raised on Slido through the QR, so thank you very much for raising questions. We'll have time for 1 or 2 questions. But if I want to close the panel with you, Ankush, basically we started discussing that, right? But what are the challenges that Egypt should overcome in the future? What opportunities do you see for the automotive sector in the future in Egypt?
Sure, Rami. I say this in a light-hearted fashion. The automotive industry is not a switch-on, switch-off industry, right? It's not that you decide today and it happens tomorrow. It's a highly capital-intensive industry, right, with long gestation periods, right? It's an industry which is an enabler to move economies, all right, and become a significant part of the economy, but it requires a right engagement between the public and private sector, right? And it needs to start with a consistent and a steady policy and framework so that when you look at investments, you're looking at it from a mid to long-term standpoint for the right return. Second, it's very important that the demand side of the business needs to be understood very clearly, right? While we all have ambitions, we all want to become the biggest industrial hub, but the demand is the critical driving force for any industrial activity. And while incentives are good, but they're good for the short haul, right? I'm not a big believer in incentives.
That's very interesting coming from private sector.
Right. I'm not a big believer in incentives. Incentives are short-term stimulants. As a private sector, we have to build our own competitiveness to compete in the market, right? But you need to look at incentives also on the demand side, because if there is demand, then there is industrial viability, right? So that's a second critical challenge that has to be addressed. Right? Third, the human capital part of it, right? We are facing as an industry the biggest disruption we have seen in the last 100 years. Right, with the onset of EVs, with the onset of autonomous vehicles, et cetera, right? And God knows what will work here. Still, the future is not foreseeable. So till the time we don't set up the right structure to train the human capital, to handle the new technologies or the new innovations, all right, or even be part of developing the new technologies and innovations, right, we won't be able to address the full need of the industry.
Very clear. Thank you. Going to the audience, there are many questions that were asked. I think some of them have already been answered. I think there was a question for Prometeon on why to produce tires in Egypt. What are the main benefits of Egypt can offer? I think that was very well answered. Unless you want to add something to it.
No.
EBRD are you interested in financing feasibility study for the factory, for any factories? Is this something that is in your scope or?
Yes, I mean, as I said, we have strategic priorities in the country, in Egypt, and one of our strategic priorities is to support the industrial development of the country. And we'll finance, if it makes sense strategically, we'll not finance any feasibility study to set up a small factory, but if it is part of the industrial strategy of the country, we'll look at it very carefully. And as I said, we're financing now with the Supreme Council of Automotive, the Automotive study, but we also finance the green hydrogen strategy for the country in the past, other important sectors. So yes, we have funds available, and I'm happy I'm here today and tomorrow to discuss.
There's another, thank you very much. There's another question, an interesting one, on whether we see Egypt becoming a big hub for manufacturing of automotive to the likes of Morocco and Turkey. And you know, they can export and compete with Morocco and Turkey. Also to another question is what are the main initiatives to improve Egypt's competitiveness in the automotive manufacturing hub, apart from the incentive that His Excellency was mentioning? Any ideas on whether we see from private sector, from EBRD?
I would answer the first.
From His Excellency.
I would answer the first one. Let me start by, I totally agree with Ankush about what he said about the incentives. The cost of production is the main issue that it will make this project last or not. And then the incentives will come over. Will we see Egypt as a hub like the countries that you have mentioned? Of course. Because we have the determination to make it, and we will make it 100%. Milton said at the beginning of his speech that it was firstly introduced in 2013. The old one, the old strategy. And at that time, I was on my previous hat as a member of the parliament. And I was heading the Committee of Industry. And I'm the one who refused the first one. Why? Because it had so many disadvantages, and I didn't get the full answer at that time on it. Now, we're on the right track. So we will reach our goal, 100%.
I think I would not like to draw comparisons to Morocco or anybody else. I think it's important to learn from success stories and also learn from failures, right? My biggest point again is for us to become an automotive industrial hub, we have to address the demand side, right? If the demand is there, we will automatically graduate to become a competitive manufacturing hub in the region. And then after that follows export, right? Or alternatively, yes, we can also follow the Morocco model where it was export which was the priority rather than the domestic market, right? But then that priority was limited to being successful only if you had an OEM to come and play, not a homegrown company like ours, right? You need the participation of an OEM very importantly to make that successful.
Very clear. Thank you. Maybe for the last few minutes of the automotive sector, I'll hand the microphone to Milton. Would like to hear more on the East Port Said automotive zone and the opportunities that it unlocks and the study that you've had them through the EBRD.
Okay, so very briefly, the feasibility study is basically to allow and assess the opportunity of OEMs to establish themselves, a bit against what Ankush just said, that he wants to grow the domestic. Maybe before I go to the EPAs, I just wanted to follow up on Ankush's point because it's very important, the demand side of things. And the demand also, and I don't follow the financial sector, I follow more the industrial sector, but the demand is driven, as we see it in Western Europe, in more developed markets, is driven by financing. So So you see a lot of demand coming through leasing, through other vendor programs, etc. So it's important to also look at that angle on the development of the industry. So if the banks or other providers of financial services could support the industry with products, I think it will help a lot to grow the market,
It's a big
the domestic market.
It's a big stimulant for increasing demand.
So just to come back to the EPAS, so feasibility study financed by mostly by the EBRD to allow to establish a paint shop which will be jointly used by one or two OEMs to bring the products, the semi-knockdown products in the Egyptian market. As an initial step, then once this is realized and you have like two OEMs, major OEMs, then you follow up with a body shop which basically is specific to OEMs, so an investment by the OEMs will come. And then you have you start building a cluster of suppliers, which brings critical mass to production. It brings skills, and then brings jobs as well, which is important for the country. So that's another part of our, if you evaluate it, in supporting this. And then once the feasibility study is moved, then of course EBRD is ready to finance with long-term capital this CapEx projects.
Thank you very much. We had planned a video, but I think because of time commitments, we will not be able to show it. Again, I'd like to apologize on behalf of Dr. Ahmed, Fekry, Abdel, Wahab, and Ms. Martina, Biene for not being here due to the commitments nearby. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Milton, Stefano, and Ankush, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this concludes the session on automotive, but does not conclude our session yet. We still have a session on pharmaceutical. This is our third and final subsession. I would like to welcome Dr. Ali Ghamrawi, if he's here. Dr. Ali? Thank you. So Dr. Ali is the chairman of the Egyptian Drug Authority, and would be really keen on getting a quick brief on the Egyptian pharma sector and its value proposition. Dr. Ali, if you may. If I can ask the audience to please sit for the speech of Dr. Ali. Thank you very much.